I thought she was just a girl next door, the one I'd known my whole life, until I found the notebook where she'd written out the next 10 years of my future. September 15th, 2025. You're going to get laid off. Winter, 2027. You'll be in a 7-Eleven, crying while you eat a microwave burrito. 2031. The day we were supposed to get together. You died. And now, she had me pinned against the wall. This time, she said, her voice shaking just a little, can you be the one to pursue me? The sycamore leaves outside my window were half gold, rustling like paper whenever the wind blew. I stared at the date in the bottom right corner of my monitor. Monday, September 15th, 2025. Another voice, cold and clinical, echoed in my head, the handwriting I'd secretly seen yesterday in Clara Vance's hardbound notebook. September 15th, 2025. Monday, clear skies. Leo Evans will be laid off from Omnicore Solutions. The reason given, project restructuring. I'm Leo Evans. I took a deep breath and forced my attention back to the lines of code on the screen. I'd only typed a few lines when my department head, Mark, emerged from his glass-walled office. He looked stressed, clutching a folder in his hand. His eyes scanned the open-plan office before landing squarely on me. My stomach dropped. Leo, Mark said, walking over to my desk. His voice was low, but loud enough for the colleagues around me to prick up their ears. Can I see you in the conference room? I stood up, my legs feeling stiff. My coworker shot me looks I couldn't quite decipher, some concerned, others just morbidly curious. I followed Mark into the small conference room. He shut the door behind us, and the soundproofing was good. The clatter of keyboards outside vanished instantly. Have a seat. Mark sat down first, placing the folder on the table between us. I pulled out a chair, my palms starting to sweat. Leo, Mark began, rubbing his hands together in that deliberately gentle way that always precedes bad news. You've been with the company for 3 years now. You do good work, everyone sees that. I didn't say anything. I was just waiting for the but. But there it was, you know how things are with the company right now. We've had directives from corporate to streamline the organizational chart, to undergo some project restructuring. He paused, sliding the folder across the table toward me. Your position is in an awkward spot. There's some functional overlap with the team we've just merged with. So, I looked down at the document. A termination of employment agreement. The black and white text aligned perfectly with the cold, hard sentence from Clara's notebook. Not a single word was different. Even the weather today matched her little note, clear skies. My throat was dry. My mind was a chaotic mess. How did she know? How could she possibly have known ahead of time? Whatever Mark said next about severance packages, exit procedures, and thanking me for my contributions was just a meaningless buzz in my ears. He finally stopped talking and looked at me, apparently waiting for a response. I opened my mouth, but my voice came out hoarse. Okay, I understand. The paperwork was processed with an efficiency that suggested it had been prepared long ago. I packed my personal belongings into a cardboard box and walked out of the building. The afternoon sun was bright, warm on my skin, but I felt a chill run through me. Standing on the edge of the busy street, I suddenly had no idea where to go. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was Clara. Are you coming home for dinner? I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen, unable to move. Clara Vance and I live across the hall from each other. We were neighbors growing up, the kind of friends who climbed trees, got into trouble together, and huddled on the same park bench trying to finish our homework. Her family eventually moved to a nicer part of town, but after college, she moved back into this old building. The apartment opposite mine happened to be for rent, so she took it. She said it was closer to her office. I always felt there was more to it than that. She'd started acting strange. It began about 6 months ago. She'd always been a bit reserved, but she used to laugh sometimes or call me an idiot. Now, she was like a block of ice. The way she looked at people was distant and exhausted, like she was tired of being alive. And she would sometimes sneak these glances at me, filled with an expression I could only describe as pity. It was one of those looks yesterday that had creeped me out so much that I'd slipped into her apartment while she was downstairs getting a package. On some strange impulse, I opened the drawer of her coffee table and found that unlocked, hardbound notebook. And that's when I saw them. All those things about my future. Are you coming home for dinner? She sent another text, this time with a question mark. I took a deep breath and typed back. I squeezed onto the subway with my box. It wasn't rush hour yet, so the car wasn't too crowded. But the face of every person standing was etched with the fatigue of a long day. I looked at my own reflection in the glass door, dazed and pathetic. I couldn't help but think of another entry in her notebook. Winter, 2027, December 3rd. Night, heavy rain. Leo Evans will be in the 7-Eleven downstairs from his office, eating a discounted microwave burrito. He'll cry because it tastes so bad. I clenched my fists without realizing it. Why would I be crying? Because the burrito was bad? No way. I'm not that pathetic. I wouldn't cry over a bad meal. So what was it then? The automated voice announcing the next station snapped me out of it. I followed the crowd out of the station. The setting sun stretched the shadows of the buildings long across the street. My old apartment building didn't have an elevator. The stairwell was filled with the smells of different dinners being cooked. I stopped at my door with a box in my arms, hesitated, and then looked at the door across the hall. It suddenly opened from the inside. Clara stood there, dressed in comfortable sweatpants and a t-shirt, her hair tied up loosely, revealing the pale skin of her neck. She was holding a bag of trash, apparently on her way out. Her movements froze when she saw me and the box in my arms. Something flickered in her eyes, recognition, maybe, or was it relief? But it was gone in an instant, replaced by her usual cool indifference. You got laid off? She asked, her voice flat. I managed a quiet, unable to meet her gaze. Come on in, she said, turning back into her apartment. Dinner's almost ready. I just stood there. Huh? She glanced back at me. You said you were coming home for dinner. I bought too much food. Without waiting for me, she disappeared inside. I had no choice but to drop the box in my own apartment, splash some water on my face, and then shuffle across the hall. Her door was ajar. I pushed it open and was greeted by the warm, comforting smell of a home-cooked meal. Mac and cheese, roasted chicken, and a simple salad. All my favorites. She was walking out of the kitchen with a bowl, placing it on her small dining table. The table was set for two. Wash your hands. Time to eat, she said without looking up. I obediently washed my hands and sat down. She served me a plate. We started eating in silence. She ate gracefully, taking small bites. My mind was a wreck. I was just going through the motions, barely tasting the food. Is it bad? She asked suddenly. No, it's great, I said quickly, forcing down a few more bites. She put her fork down and looked at me. Did you get a decent severance package? Yeah, the standard deal, I answered honestly. Good, she nodded. That's fine. Take some time off. Don't rush to find a new job. I couldn't help but look up at her. Her expression was so calm, as if I were just on vacation. Did you? I started hesitating. Did you somehow? What? She asked, her gaze sharp and clear. Nothing. I looked down and went back to my food. I couldn't ask her. What was I supposed to say? Are you from the future? And is that notebook a record of my life? It was insane. She didn't speak again. After dinner, I took the initiative to clear the table and wash the dishes. She didn't stop me, just leaned against the kitchen door frame and watched. The sound of running water filled the small space. The kitchen window was open, and the night breeze carried the scent of someone else's spicy cooking from next door. So what's the plan now? She asked. Start sending out resumes, I guess, I said, squirting soap onto the sponge. What else can I do? Right, she said. Let me know if you need any help. I rinsed the last plate, placed it in the drying rack, and wiped my hands before turning to face her. Clara. Yeah, why do you? I chose my words carefully. Why do you seem completely unsurprised that I got fired? Her eyes flickered for a second. She looked away, out the window at the darkening sky. The economy's bad. Layoffs are normal, she said, her voice betraying no emotion. But you even knew the date. I blurted out, then immediately shut my mouth. Her head snapped back toward me, her eyes boring into mine. The date. A knot of anxiety tightened in my chest. I'd slipped up. Nothing, I said, avoiding her gaze. I was just talking nonsense. She didn't press further, but the way she looked at me now held a new level of scrutiny and suspicion. It made my skin crawl. I should go. Thanks for dinner, I said, practically fleeing her apartment. Back in my own place, I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding in my chest. The next few days were a blur of sending resumes and going on interviews. but it was like I was cursed. Everywhere I went, I hit a dead end. Either they thought I was asking for too much money, or my project experience wasn't a perfect match. One company even got to the point of a verbal offer, only to call the next day and say the position had been frozen. I was walking out of yet another failed interview, feeling completely dejected. The sky was gray and heavy, threatening rain. I stood on the street corner, watching the cars rush by, feeling an immense sense of exhaustion. My resume folder was almost empty. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello, is this Leo Evans? This is Innovatech Dynamics. We receive your resume and feel you're a fantastic fit for our needs. Would you be available for an interview tomorrow afternoon?" The woman on the phone sounded enthusiastic. I recognized the company name, a fast-growing startup with a lot of buzz. My spirits lifted instantly. "Yes, absolutely. What time works for you?" After setting the time and place, I hung up, letting out a long sigh of relief. Maybe my luck hadn't completely run out. Feeling a bit better, I ducked into a nearby convenience store and bought a cold Coke, chugging half of it down in one go. The sharp fizz was a small, momentary comfort. It was completely dark by the time I got back to my apartment building. The old fluorescent light in the stairwell flickered erratically. Clara was standing outside her door, as if she were waiting for me. "How was the interview?" she asked. "I have another one tomorrow. Innovatech Dynamics. It feels promising," I said, trying to sound optimistic. The moment she heard Innovatech Dynamics, her brow furrowed. "Don't go," she said, her voice cold. "Why?" I was stunned. "It's a good company. I looked them up." I said, "Don't go." She interrupted, her tone sharp with an urgency I didn't understand. "There's something wrong with that company." "What's wrong with it?" "The management is a mess. The boss plays favorites." "It's a trap." Her words came out fast, but her eyes seemed to shift away from mine. A strange feeling washed over me. "How do you know? Do you know someone who works there?" She paused, turning her face away. "I heard things. Just don't go." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. A spark of defiance ignited in me. Jobs were this hard to find, and here was a great opportunity. Why should I give it up based on her say-so? Based on that bizarre notebook. "I've already scheduled the interview," I said. "I can't just not show up." She turned back to me, her gaze heavy. "Leo, can you just trust me on this one? You have to give me a reason." I was getting annoyed now, too. "The reason is that company is not for you," she said, her voice rising with a frantic energy I couldn't comprehend. "You'll regret it." "How am I supposed to know if I'll regret it if you don't tell me why?" We stood there in the hallway, the motion-activated light flickering on from our raised voices, casting a sickly yellow glow on us. The air was thick with tension. Her chest rose and fell quickly. She looked me in the eye, her lips parting as if to say more, but then she said nothing at all. That look in her eyes, so helpless and desperate, popped my anger like a balloon. "Clara," I said, my voice softening. "What's going on with you? You've been acting so weird lately." She lowered her gaze, her long eyelashes casting shadows on her cheeks. "It's nothing," she said quietly. I don't want to see you make a mistake." "I know you mean well," I sighed, "but I can't pass up an opportunity because of a rumor. I have to go see for myself." She was silent for a long time, so long that the light in the hallway timed out and shut off. In the darkness, I heard her take a very quiet, shaky breath. "Fine, do what you want." With that, she turned, unlocked her door, and went inside, shutting it behind her. I stood alone in the pitch-black hallway, feeling a profound emptiness. The next afternoon, I went to the Innovatech Dynamics interview. It went incredibly well. Both the HR manager and the lead engineer were impressed with me. They even discussed salary and benefits on the spot, offering a little more than I had expected. "Mr. Evans, your qualifications are a perfect match for what we're looking for," the HR manager said with a wide smile. "If you don't have any other questions, we'd like to have you start as soon as possible." "I have no other questions," I said. "I can start right away." "That's fantastic. Please wait here for a moment while I go prepare the offer letter." The HR manager got up and left the room. Sitting there in the conference room, my mood finally brightened. It looked like Clara's information was wrong. This company seemed great. Once I signed the contract and had the offer in hand, I'd tell her the good news. That should put her mind at ease. The conference room door opened. I looked up with a smile, assuming it was the HR manager returning. But it was a different man, middle-aged, slightly overweight, and balding, dressed in a cheap suit. "Who are you? What are you doing in here?" he asked, his tone aggressive. I was taken aback. I stood up. "I'm here for an interview." "Leo Evans. HR is just getting my offer letter." "An interview? For what position?" he asked, striding closer with a frown. "Senior back-end engineer." He snatched my resume off the table and glanced at it, his expression darkening. "This is a mistake. We've already filled this position. Who told you to come in for an interview?" He waved his hand dismissively. "You can go now." I was stunned. "Filled, but the HR manager and the lead engineer just said." "I said it's filled. What they say doesn't matter," the man snapped. "Now get out." Just then, the HR manager rushed back in, looking mortified. "Mr. Davison, this is Mr. Evans. He was interviewed by David's team. He's an excellent candidate." "David's team?" Mr. Davison sneered. "He's a team lead. Does he get to decide who we hire? I told you this position is for my nephew. Tell him to get lost." The HR manager looked at me, his face a mask of apology. "Mr. Evans, I'm so sorry. I was frozen to the spot. A hot flush of blood rushed to my face. Anger and humiliation churned inside me. I clenched my fists, looking from the arrogant Mr. Davison to the apologetic but powerless HR manager. In the end, I said nothing. I just picked up my resume and walked out of the conference room. As I left, I could still hear Mr. Davison yelling, "From now on, you hold these positions for me. Don't just bring any random person off the street in here." Stepping into the elevator, I saw my own furious face in the mirrored wall and suddenly remembered the desperate, helpless look in Clara's eyes yesterday. "Don't go. There's something wrong with that company. You'll regret it." She knew. Somehow, she knew everything. I returned home in a daze. The hallway was silent. I stood at my own door, but couldn't bring myself to take out my keys. I turned and looked across the hall. After a long hesitation, I walked over and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. She probably wasn't home from work yet. I leaned against the wall next to her door and slowly slid down to the floor, burying my head in my knees. I was tired, an indescribable exhaustion. Not physical, but a deep, soul-crushing sense of futility. Like no matter how hard I struggled, my fate was already nailed down. I don't know how long I sat there before I heard footsteps in the stairwell. I looked up. Clara was walking up the stairs, carrying her laptop bag. She stopped short when she saw me sitting by her door. She walked over and stood in front of me, looking down without a word. I scrambled to my feet, not bothering to brush the dust off my clothes. "You were right," I said, my voice raspy. "That company, there was definitely something wrong with it." She watched me in silence, her expression complicated. "The owner," I tried to explain. "He was saving the job for his nephew." "Yeah," she replied softly. "I know. How could you know?" The question finally burst out of me. "It's like, you know everything." She looked away, pulling out her keys to unlock her door. I guessed. It's common in small companies like that. Another vague, dismissive explanation. I watched her open the door and start to go inside. A sudden impulse took over. I stepped forward and put my hand on the door, stopping it from closing. She turned back, surprised. "Clara," I said, staring directly into her eyes. "I read your notebook." The color drained from her face. What did you read it?" Her voice trembled. "A few days ago," I said, "I saw what you wrote. About me." Her fingers tightened on the doorknob, her knuckles turning white. Panic flashed in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a profound, heavy weariness. "How much did you see?" she asked in a low voice. "I saw that you wrote, 'I'd be laid off today,'" I said, enunciating every word. "I saw that you wrote in the winter of 2027, I'd be in a 7-Eleven crying over a burrito." And my throat tightened. "And that in 2031, on the day we were supposed to get together, I died." After I spoke, a dead silence fell over the hallway. The motion-activated light went out, leaving only the light from her apartment to outline her pale profile. She lowered her head, her shoulders slumping as if a massive weight had finally been lifted. "Come in," she said, letting go of the door and walking inside. Her voice was exhausted. I followed her in and closed the door. She went to the living room couch and sat down, her hands folded in her lap. Her back was straight, but her eyes were empty. I sat on the armchair next to her, my heart hammering against my ribs. Everything in that notebook. It's real, isn't it? I asked. She nodded slowly. It's real. Is it? I struggled to get the words out. Is it your diary? She shook her head, then looked up at me. Her eyes held a desolation I had never seen before. It's what happened in the last life. Even though I had suspected it, hearing her say it out loud made the hair on my arms stand up. The last life. My voice was dry. Yeah, she said, a bitter smile twisting her lips. After I died, I don't know why, but I woke up 6 months ago with all my memories. I try to process this staggering information. So, what you wrote in the notebook, that's all. Things that have already happened. My future. It was your future in the last life, she corrected me. Then how? How did I? I couldn't bring myself to say the word die, but she understood. An accident, she said softly. A car accident. On that day, the day we were supposed to get together. My heart sank. So in the last life, we were together. I asked, looking at her. Her eyelashes fluttered. She gave a faint, almost inaudible, then, what about this life? I pressed. Will it be the same? Will all those things still happen? She was silent for a long time. I don't know, she finally said, her voice laced with uncertainty. Since I came back, I've tried to change small things. Some have changed. Like that cold you had last month. I gave you medicine ahead of time, so you didn't get as sick as you did last time. But the big things, they seem harder to change. Like you getting laid off. I tried to hint at it a few times, tell you to prepare, but in the end, she trailed off. But I understood. The major events seemed to be set in stone. What about my death? That predestined ending. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Tell you what. She gave a humorless laugh. That I've lived this life before. That you're going to die in a few years. Would you have believed me? I had no response. If I hadn't seen the notebook and personally experienced the layoff and the interview, I probably wouldn't have believed her. I would have thought she'd lost her mind. My plan was to take it slow, to try and change things bit by bit, she whispered, as long as we could avoid that accident. Her voice was laced with a vulnerability and helplessness I'd never heard before. Her words landed like a cold stone in my gut, pulling me down. As long as we could avoid that accident, she said it so simply, but I knew how hard it would be. The sentences from the notebook flashed in my mind again, each one dripping with despair. I looked at her hands, which were trembling slightly. Any frustration I'd felt about being kept in the dark was instantly washed away by an overwhelming wave of empathy. She had been carrying these memories, this secret of my death, all by herself for 6 months. What must it have been like for her, watching me live my life, completely oblivious and carefree? I took a deep breath, stood up, and walked over to kneel in front of her. From this angle, I had to look up to meet her eyes. She seemed surprised, her gaze darting away, trying to avoid mine. Clara, I said, my voice soft, as if afraid to startle her. I'm sorry. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with confusion. What are you sorry for? For not knowing, I said. For leaving you to carry this all by yourself for so long. Her eyes welled up almost instantly. She quickly turned her head away, her voice choked. It's not your fault. It is my fault, I insisted. If the me from the last life had been more careful, you wouldn't have been left alone. And in this life, I've made you. She turned back to me, her eyes wet but flashing with anger. Don't say that. It has nothing to do with you. How can it not? I looked at her. That was me, wasn't it? The one who made you sad, the one who's making you so scared right now. That's me, isn't it? She opened her mouth, but couldn't speak, biting her lower lip hard. This life is different, Clara, I said, reaching for her hand. Her fingertips were ice cold. She flinched, but didn't pull away. I know now. I won't let that happen again. We'll figure this out together, okay? She stared at me, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. One drop, then another, landed on our joined hands, scalding hot. I'm scared, she finally whispered, her voice breaking. I'm scared that no matter what I do, it won't work. That in the end, it'll still. It won't. I cut her off, squeezing her hand tightly. If we can change the small things, we can change the big things too. We still have time. Years. That's more than enough time to prepare. I let go of her hand to clumsily wipe her tears away. The soft skin of her cheek was warm under my fingers, and my heart ached with a tender softness. Don't cry. See, I'm right here. Perfectly fine, alive and kicking, and able to make you mad. She sniffled, her voice thick with congestion. You didn't make me cry. Right, my mistake. It's just dusty in here. I went along with her. She shot me a glare, but with her eyes all red and puffy. It had no effect. It just made me want to hug her. So I did. I tentatively reached out and gently wrapped my arms around her shoulders. Her body tensed for a moment, but she didn't push me away. I rested my chin on the top of her head, inhaling the faint, pleasant scent of her hair. I'll listen to you from now on, I whispered, feeling her tremble slightly in my arms. You tell me to go east, I won't even look west. You tell me to stay away from trucks, I'll take a detour every time I see a semi. Deal. She was quiet in my embrace for a moment, then gave the slightest of nods. You promise. Her voice was muffled against my shirt. You can't take it back. I promise, I vowed. Cross my heart and hope to die. Well, you know. She actually let out a small laugh at that. It was brief, but I knew that the heavy burden that had been crushing her had, for a moment, loosened its grip. From that day on, my life completely changed. Clara became my personal safety advisor, involved in every tiny detail. Before I left in the morning, she checked to make sure my phone was fully charged. You need to be reachable. What if there's an emergency? I'd dutifully show her the 100% battery icon. When we crossed the street, even at a crosswalk with the walk signal on, she would grip my arm tightly, her head swiveling left and right to check for cars before we hurried across. I let her, and I even imagined the passing drivers were jealous. She started researching different insurance plans, making me read through the policies with her. She ended up buying me a life insurance policy with an absurdly high payout. The beneficiary was her. My hand didn't even shake when I signed the papers. If I really do bite the dust, this should be enough to keep you comfortable for the rest of your life, I joked. Her face fell instantly. She snatched the policy out of my hand. Don't say things like that. I immediately shut up, realizing I'd crossed a line. My job search became an extremely cautious affair. For every potential offer, she would use all her connections to investigate the company's background, the CEO's reputation, and even the safety of the commute. I eventually took a job at a small, friendly company close to home. The pay wasn't great, but it gave her peace of mind. And so the days passed, one by one, in a calm, almost mundane rhythm. We lived like a couple that had already moved in together. We'd go grocery shopping, cook dinner, and on weekends, she would bring her laptop over to my place, taking over my desk to work, claiming it was for closer supervision. I'd be on the couch playing video games, and I could look up and see the focused profile of her face, softly illuminated by her screen. And I would feel an incredible sense of peace. Fall gave way to winter. The end of 2025 was approaching. On New Year's Eve, we squeezed onto my small balcony to watch the scattered fireworks blooming over the distant downtown skyline. The view from our old building wasn't the best, but the atmosphere was perfect. The air was crisp and cold. She was wrapped in a thick blanket, with only her face peeking out, her nose red from the chill. Another year, she said softly, her breath turning into a white puff that quickly vanished in the wind. This is nice. I knew what she meant by nice. I was still alive. We were both okay. Yeah, I said, turning to look at her. And it's going to stay that way. She turned and smiled at me, her eyes sparkling. My heart stirred. I suddenly thought about the notebook entry. Winter 2027, a 7-11. A burrito so bad it makes you cry. It was now the beginning of 2026. We had 2 full years until that day. I had to do something to completely change that future. After the new year, I settled into my job, and everything seemed to be on a stable track. But I could feel that deep inside, Clara was still on edge. The tension never really went away. She would still jolt awake from nightmares sometimes and call me, just to make sure my phone was on. During thunderstorms, she would be restless, repeatedly telling me not to go outside. I knew that the unresolved ending of 2031 hung over her head like the sword of Damocles. It hung over my head, too. I had to do more than just passively avoid danger. I had to go on the offensive to completely derail that damn future. One weekend afternoon, the sun was streaming into my living room. We were lazing on the rug, soaking up the warmth. She was leaning against the couch reading a book, and I was using her lap as a pillow. Clara, I said with my eyes closed. Let's go on a trip. The rustle of her turning a page stopped. Why the sudden urge to travel? I just feel like it, I said, opening my eyes to look at the soft line of her jaw against the light. Let's go somewhere far away, somewhere warm. We can use our vacation days. She looked down, thinking, okay, a change of scenery could be nice. Where do you want to go? Somewhere south? Or an island? I suggested. You pick. Whatever you want. As I expected, she immediately started researching destinations, comparing flights and hotels. We finally settled on an island in Southeast Asia. The visa was easy to get, the sun was always shining, and life was slow. The night before we left, she was unusually anxious, triple-checking my suitcase, packing it full of sunscreen, bug spray, and a pharmacy's worth of basic medicine. Don't eat from the street vendors over there. Be careful with what you eat. You have to wear a life jacket when you go out on a boat. No showing off. Don't go to any quiet, remote places at night. I agreed to everything, finally taking her busy hands in mine. Professor Vance, we're going on vacation, not into a dragon's den. She paused, then laughed at herself. I know, I just can't help nagging. It's okay, I said, squeezing her fingers. I like it when you nag me. As the plane took off, she stared out the window at the shrinking city below, her fingers unconsciously picking at her seatbelt. I placed my hand over hers. Scared, she shook her head. No, it's just, I haven't traveled in a long time. I knew it wasn't a fear of flying. It was a fear of leaving the safe zone she had carefully constructed over the past year. An unfamiliar environment meant unknowns and a loss of control. I held her hand tighter. I'm here. She turned to look at me and smiled, her fingers lacing with mine. I know. The tropical sea breeze was a world away from the dry, cold winter of our city. The air was humid and warm, filled with the salty tang of the ocean and the sweet scent of exotic flowers. Our hotel room faced the sea, with a balcony overlooking a white sand beach and a turquoise, jello-like ocean. Clara visibly relaxed. She changed into a beautiful sundress, put on a wide-brimmed straw hat, and her pale skin seemed to glow in the sun. During the day, we went snorkeling, marveling at the vibrant coral and schools of tiny fish. In the evening, we walked along the beach, watching the sunset paint the sky and sea in brilliant shades of gold and red. At night, we ate fresh seafood at a bustling night market and drank iced coconut water. She smiled more often. She would look at me, at the ocean, at the laughing tourists around us, and the heavy burden in her eyes seemed to have been carried away by the sea breeze. My own heart felt lighter. This was it. This was what I wanted. To create new, beautiful memories to overwrite the cold, desperate ones from the past. One evening, we were having dinner at a charming beachfront restaurant decorated with string lights. The sound of the waves was just a few feet away, and the air smelled of grilled meat and spices. She'd had a little wine, and her cheeks were flushed. Her eyes were brighter than usual as she rested her chin on her hand, listening to a busker at the next table strum a cheerful local love song. She was even tapping her foot to the beat under the table. I looked at her, and my heart melted. Clara, I said. She turned to face me, a smile still on her lips. I'm in love with you. The song, the waves, the laughter around us, it all seemed to fade away. She froze, her eyes widening slightly. The smile slowly vanished from her face, replaced by a complex emotion I couldn't read. Was it shock, panic, or fear? My heart sank. Not in the way from the last life. I added quickly, my voice a bit dry. It's this life. The me right now, Leo Evans, is in love with you. I want to be with you. I want to always be by your side. I want to change that goddamn future with you. I said it all in one breath, my heart pounding, my palms sweating. She just stared at me, her lips pressed into a thin line. Her expression made me nervous. After a long time, so long I thought she wasn't going to answer, she finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. What if we can't change it in the end? Then it was still worth it, I said, holding her gaze. I got to have all these extra years. And this time, I was the one who said it first. That's different from the last life, right? Her eyelashes trembled violently. She quickly looked down, picked up her glass of ice water, and took a long drink. When she set the glass down, it made a sharp clinking sound. She took a deep breath and looked up again. Her eyes were red, but her gaze was incredibly clear and determined. Okay, now it was my turn to be stunned. Okay. Yes, she nodded. Her voice had a slight tremor, but it was firm. Let's be together. In this life, it's your turn to pursue me. As she spoke, a genuine, easy smile spread across her face, like the sun breaking through dark clouds. And you'd better do a good job. A huge wave of joy and relief crashed over me. I broke into a goofy grin, reaching across the table to grab her hand. You got it. Mission accepted. Professor Vance can grade me however she wants. She laughed and let me hold her hand. The busker in the distance had switched to a slow, soulful, old English love song. The string lights swayed gently in the sea breeze. The moment was so perfect, it felt like a dream I never wanted to wake up from. I knew we had just taken the most important step. After we got back from the island, we officially started dating. It was just like any normal relationship, but at the same time, completely different. We still lived across the hall from each other, but we spent more and more time in each other's apartments. I would sneak over early in the morning to make her burnt eggs for breakfast in her kitchen. She would bring me dinner when I worked late, under the guise of supervising me to make sure I wasn't driving while tired. We'd go to the supermarket and argue over what flavor of yogurt to buy. We'd spend weekends curled up on the couch watching old movies, and she'd secretly wipe away tears during the sad parts, getting mad if I caught her. It was a simple, mundane life, but it was filled with a warm, domestic glow. Every ordinary moment felt precious because we knew how close we'd come to losing it all. I was meticulously careful, avoiding any potential dangers, keeping every promise I made to her. The shadows in her eyes gradually faded. Although a sudden, unexpected event could still make her anxious, she was no longer constantly on high alert. Time moved smoothly toward 2027. When winter arrived, the weather turned cold. On December 3rd, the sky was gray from the moment I woke up. The forecast called for rain that night. I was on edge all day. When I left work, it had started to rain, and not just a drizzle. Cold winter rain hammered against my windshield, blurring my vision. I drove carefully, much slower than usual. While waiting at a red light, I glanced instinctively at the 7-Eleven on the corner. Under its bright fluorescent lights, the rows of pre-packaged meals looked completely unappetizing. My heart skipped a beat. This was the day. The notebook said I would be in there, crying over a meal. Why would I cry? I shook my head, trying to push the thought away. I just drove home. Clara had a late meeting at her office and would be home later. I parked the car and dashed through the rain into the building. My apartment felt cold and empty. I changed my clothes and debated whether to order takeout or just make something myself. My phone rang. It was Clara. Are you home? Her voice was a little muffled by background noise. She was clearly still out. Just got in. You, still at the office? Yeah. Something came up last minute. I'll probably be another hour. Have you eaten? Not yet. Was just thinking about it. Don't order delivery. It'll take forever in this rain, she said. I think the 7-Eleven downstairs has a new roasted chicken meal. I heard it's not bad. Why don't you grab one of those for now? I'll be home soon. My heart seized in my chest. 7-11. A meal. What's wrong? You don't want it? She asked when I didn't reply. No, I said, taking a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Okay, yeah, I'll go check it out. You take your time. Drive safe. I will. After hanging up, I stood there for a long time, just holding my phone. Finally, I grabbed my keys and an umbrella and went downstairs. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming loudly on my umbrella. I walked into the 7-Eleven, and a blast of warm air, smelling of hot dogs and coffee, hit me. Sure enough, there on the shelf was the new roasted chicken meal. I picked one up and took it to the counter to be microwaved. While I waited, I stared out the window at the rain-streaked street, where cars with their hazard lights blinking moved slowly through the downpour. I felt strangely calm. The heated meal was hot in my hands. I carried it over to a high-top counter by the window and sat down. I peeled back the plastic film. The chicken and vegetables looked a little better than I'd expected. I picked up the plastic fork it came with, scooped up some rice, and put it in my mouth. It tasted fine. Standard convenience store quality. Not bad, but definitely not good. I ate slowly, one bite after another. My mind was elsewhere. I was wondering where Clara was, hoping she was being careful driving in the heavy rain. I was thinking about where we should go for dinner tomorrow on the weekend. I was thinking about the summer of 2031, still years away, and how we would celebrate our first major anniversary after our rebirth. I was halfway through the meal when I lost my appetite. I put the fork down and just looked out the window. The rain seemed to be letting up a little. A familiar car pulled up to the curb. It was Clarice. She got out with an umbrella and ran into the 7-Eleven. A little bell on the door chimed. She folded her wet umbrella and looked up, her eyes immediately finding me sitting by the window with the half-eaten meal in front of me. She paused for a second, then hurried over. "Why did you actually come eat this?" Her hair and shoulders were damp with rain, and her eyes were filled with a mixture of concern and a subtle, hidden tension. "I was just suggesting. It's not good, is it?" I shook my head and smiled at her. "It's okay. Not as bad as I imagined." She studied my face, as if searching for something. After a long moment, she let out a sigh of relief and mumbled, "Looks like it really did change." "What changed?" I asked. "Nothing," she said, smiling as she took the meal container from me. "Don't eat any more of this. It looks depressing. Let's go home. I'll make you fried rice." "Okay." I stood up and naturally took the umbrella from her hand. As we walked to the door, she linked her arm through mine, leaning close. I pushed the door open, and a gust of cold, rain-laced wind blew in. She shivered. I opened the umbrella, holding most of it over her. We walked out into the rain together, toward our small, warm, brightly lit home. Behind us, a layer of condensation fogged the glass window of the 7-Eleven. That half-eaten, mediocre roasted chicken meal sat abandoned in the trash can. I knew that this page in the notebook had finally, definitively been turned. It hadn't made me cry, and it never would, because in this life, I have her by my side. Together, we will leave every last regret and misfortune far, far behind us.